The day a powerful millionaire mocked a quiet old woman was the day he unknowingly destroyed his own empire. Because what happened after she made that phone call was something no one in that room was prepared for. The boardroom didn't just look expensive, it felt like power. Cold glass walls, a long polished table that stretched like authority itself. Every chair filled with people who carried confidence like a uniform. And then there was her. I noticed her the moment I walked in. She didn't belong there, at least that's what everyone thought. No designer suit, no laptop, no polished introduction. Just a simple, slightly faded dress and a worn handbag resting quietly on her lap. She sat still, calm, observing, not trying to impress anyone, not trying to be seen. And somehow that made her stand out even more. Nobody greeted her. Nobody asked her name. Nobody cared. But here's what it makes sense. She didn't look uncomfortable. She didn't look lost. She looked like someone who was waiting. And I remember thinking, waiting for what? Then the doors opened, and everything shifted. Marcus Blake walked in like time itself had been delayed just for him. Late, unapologetic, untouchable. At 44, he had built a reputation that filled rooms before he even entered them. The kind of man who didn't ask for respect. He expected it, and got it. He adjusted his cufflinks, took the head seat, and gave a small, confident smile. The kind that said, "This deal is already done." This wasn't just another meeting. This was a takeover. Blake Industries was about to acquire Cridge and Partners, a quiet company that had survived over 30 years. Its founder was gone, its structure assumed weak, and Marcus had spent months positioning himself for this exact moment. Everything was aligned. Everything was perfect until his eyes scanned the room, face after face. Approval, agreement, control. Then they stopped on her, the old woman at the far end of the table. His expression shifted slightly, not confusion, annoyance. He leaned toward his assistant. "Who is that?" A pause, a quiet response. "I'm not sure, sir." That answer didn't sit well with him, because Marcus Blake didn't like unknown variables. He looked at her again, this time longer. She didn't react, didn't look back, didn't acknowledge him. And for some reason, that irritated him more than open disrespect ever could. The meeting moved forward. Documents passed. Numbers confirmed. Everything flowed exactly the way Marcus had designed it. Control, precision, victory, getting closer with every second, until his lead attorney paused. "Before final signatures, we need to confirm full shareholder representation." A small sentence, but it changed the air in the room. A board member shifted uncomfortably. There may be one outstanding matter. Marcus looked up immediately, sharp, focused. What matter? Silence. And in that silence, she spoke. Her voice was soft, not weak, controlled. "The outstanding matter," she said calmly, "is me." The room froze. Marcus looked at her, and then he laughed, not because it was funny, but because he didn't believe she mattered. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I don't know who let you in here." A few uncomfortable glances around the room, but no one interrupted him. That's what power does. It silences others, even when it's wrong. He gestured casually toward the door. "This is serious business. If you're confused, feel free to call whoever you want." A pause, a smirk, a taxi your family, anyone. A few forced chuckles, but not from everyone. Some people looked down, because something about her didn't feel like a mistake. She didn't react, didn't argue, didn't defend herself. She simply reached into her worn handbag and took out her phone, slowly, deliberately, like someone who had already decided how this would end. She dialed, held the phone to her ear, and spoke just one sentence. "Yes, bring everything." A pause, then more quietly, "The original documents." Marcus was still smiling, but something inside the room had already started to shift, because confidence is loud, until truth walks in quietly. And whatever was coming through that door was about to change everything. The truth is, that moment in the boardroom didn't begin there. It started over 3 decades ago, long before Marcus Blake ever heard a name Cridge and Partners. Back when it was nothing more than a small office and a man with a stubborn dream. I remember the first time my husband showed me the place. It wasn't impressive. Peeling paint on the walls, a single desk, 2 chairs that didn't match, and a window that barely opened. But when he stood there explaining what it could become, he didn't see what was there. He saw what could be built. "This won't stay small," he told me, smiling like a man who had already seen the future. "One day, people depend on this company, and they won't even know our names." I laughed back then, not because I didn't believe him, but because I didn't understand yet what kind of man I had married. He wasn't loud. He didn't chase attention. He didn't care about titles or recognition. He cared about building something that lasted, something honest, something that couldn't be easily taken away. And for 31 years, that's exactly what he did. There were nights he came home exhausted, hands shaking slightly from stress he never talked about. There were deals he walked away from because they didn't feel right. There were opportunities, big ones, that he turned down quietly because he used to say, "Not everything that grows fast grows right." I didn't always agree. There were moments I wanted more comfort, more security, less struggle, but he stayed the same, steady, unshaken, certain. And over time, the world began to notice. The company grew, not loudly, not aggressively, but solidly. People trusted it. Clients stayed. Employees built their lives around it. It became something rare, a company people believed in. But success has a way of attracting attention, and not all attention comes with good intentions. I remember the first time someone tried to buy us out. A polished man in an expensive suit. He spoke confidently, promised expansion, global reach, unimaginable growth. I watched my husband listen patiently, then politely decline. The man smiled, but his eyes didn't. "Everything has a price," he said before leaving. My husband didn't respond. He just waited until the door closed, then looked at me and said quietly, "Some things should never be for sale." Years passed. More offers came, bigger names, more money, more pressure. Each one turned away, each one leaving behind the same quiet tension. And then everything changed, not because of a deal, not because of competition, but because life doesn't ask for permission before it takes something from you. The day he fell ill, the world didn't stop. The company kept running. Meetings continued. Decisions had to be made. But for the first time in decades, he wasn't the one making them. I sat beside him in that hospital room, machines humming softly in the background. He looked smaller somehow, not weaker, just aware of time, aware of what was coming. He reached for my hand. "Promise me something," he said. I nodded, already feeling the weight of his words before he finished them. "No matter what happens, don't let them take it." His voice was quiet, but firm. "They'll come when I'm gone. They'll think it's easier." A pause. "They'll think you won't understand what this is." I swallowed hard. "I won't let that happen," I told him, and I meant it, even though at the time, I had no idea how difficult that promise would become. After he passed, the call started. Condolences at first, respectful, polite, then strategic. Questions about leadership, about direction, about what's next. And underneath it all, one quiet assumption, that I wouldn't be able to hold it together. Board members began making decisions faster, without waiting, without asking. Conversations started happening in rooms I wasn't invited into. Documents were signed and later explained to me, not discussed, explained. I saw it happening, felt it, but I stayed quiet. Not because I was weak, but because I was watching, learning who stood where, learning who had already decided the company was no longer mine to protect. And then his name came up, Marcus Blake. At first, it was just a mention, a potential partner, a strategic opportunity, a necessary move for growth. But the more I listened, the clearer it became. This wasn't a partnership. It was a takeover, carefully planned, quietly executed. They thought I wouldn't understand the numbers. They thought I wouldn't read the fine print. They thought grief had made me blind. But grief didn't blind me. It sharpened me. So I started going through everything, every document, every transfer, every signature. And that's when I saw it. The one thing they had all overlooked, or maybe the one thing they hoped I would never notice. The controlling shares, still in my name, still untouched, still holding the power they were trying to move around without me. That's when I knew this wasn't just about business anymore. This was about keeping a promise. So I made a decision. I didn't argue, didn't confront anyone, didn't raise my voice. I let them believe that I didn't know. And when they scheduled the final acquisition meeting, I made sure of one thing, that I would be in that room, not as a guest, not as a mistake, but as the one person they never planned for. And as I sat there that morning, watching them prepare to sell something that was never theirs to sell, I remembered his words, wait for the right moment. So I did. I waited, because timing is the difference between being ignored and being undeniable. And back in that boardroom, as Marcus Blake laughed and told me to call whoever I wanted, I realized something. He had just given me exactly what I needed, the moment, and the moment hadn't even fully arrived yet. Back in that room, everything looked normal on the surface. Paper still moving, pens still tapping, people still pretending nothing had changed. But it had. The moment I made that call, something invisible shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough for the people who were paying attention to feel it. Marcus tried to keep control. I could see in the way he adjusted his posture, the way he picked up his pen again like nothing had happened. Let's not waste time, he said, his tone sharper now. We'll proceed while we wait. A few nervous nods followed, but no one sounded confident anymore. His attorney cleared his throat and continued reading through the documents. Words filled the room, but they no longer held weight, because now there was a question sitting quietly between every sentence. What did she just do? I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Silence can do more damage than arguments ever could. One of the board members leaned slightly toward another and whispered, too softly for Marcus, but not too soft for me. Did you know about this? A pause. No, did you? A subtle shake of the head. That was the moment I knew. The confidence in this room wasn't real. It was borrowed, and now it was being taken back. Marcus noticed it too. You could see it in his eyes. He stopped looking at the documents and started watching people. That's what powerful men do when control begins to slip. They look for loyalty, and when they don't find it, they get uncomfortable. What exactly are we waiting for? He asked, this time directly at the board. His voice was still steady, but the patience inside it was gone. One of them finally spoke, slowly, carefully. There are historical ownership records that may need clarification. Marcus frowned. May need. Another pause. No one wanted to be the one to say it out loud. I watched him lean back slightly, studying the room, calculating, trying to figure out how something so simple had become uncertain. Then his eyes came back to me. This time, there was no amusement in them, only suspicion. You seem very confident for someone who walked into a meeting uninvited, he said. A few people shifted uncomfortably again. He was trying to regain control, trying to pull the attention back to where he understood it, back to authority. I met his gaze for the first time. Calm, unrushed. I didn't walk in uninvited, I said quietly. A small pause. I've always belonged here. That sentence didn't raise my voice, but it landed. You could feel it. Marcus gave a short, dismissive laugh, but it didn't carry the same weight as before. Belonging and ownership are two very different things, he replied. I nodded slightly. You're right, I said, and then I went silent again. That unsettled him more than if I had argued, because I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was waiting for it to prove itself. Minutes passed. Slowly, uncomfortably, the room had changed. Before it was filled with certainty. Now it was filled with anticipation. One of the junior associates checked his watch. Another kept glancing at the door. Someone's phone buzzed, and they silenced it quickly, as if even that sound felt too loud. Marcus tapped his pen once, twice, then stopped. Small habits start breaking when control starts slipping. Finally, he leaned toward his attorney again, quiet but firm. Fix this. Not a request. An order. But the attorney didn't respond immediately. He didn't nod, didn't reassure him. That was the second sign. Because when the people who are supposed to protect your position start hesitating, it means your position is no longer protected. The air in the room grew heavier, like something was approaching slowly, deliberately, and then footsteps outside the boardroom. Not hurried, not uncertain, measured, purposeful. Every head turned toward the door. Even Marcus, for the first time since he walked into that room, he wasn't ahead of what was happening. And in that moment, you could feel it clearly. The shift. Power was moving, quietly, and whatever was about to walk through that door was no longer under his control. The handle turned. The handle turned slowly, not rushed, not forced, just a quiet, deliberate movement, like whoever was on the other side already understood the weight of this moment. The door opened. A young legal officer stepped in first, neatly dressed, focused, professional. But it wasn't him that changed the room. It was what he carried. A sealed brown envelope. No one spoke. No one needed to, because now everyone understood. This wasn't a delay. This was the interruption that changes outcomes. He didn't look around for instructions. Didn't ask where to go. He walked straight toward me, step by step, and placed the envelope gently in front of me. That single action shifted the room more than anything Marcus had said all morning. I placed my hand on the envelope, felt the weight of it, not just the paper inside, but everything it represented. Years of work, promises kept, truth waiting to be acknowledged. Across the table, Marcus leaned forward. "Open it," he said, not aggressively, but not calmly either. He needed clarity, because uncertainty was no longer something he could control. I didn't respond to him. I opened it when I was ready, slowly, carefully. I slid the documents out, one by one. No rush, no performance, just quiet certainty. The sound of paper moving across the table felt louder than it should have, because now every small detail mattered. I scanned the first page, then the second, even though I had already seen them before, even though I already knew what they would say. This wasn't for me. This was for them. Marcus exhaled impatiently. "What exactly are we looking at?" he asked, his voice tighter now, less polished. I lifted my eyes, met his, and for the first time, he didn't look like the man who walked into the room earlier. "These," I said quietly, "are the original shareholder certificates." A slight shift across the table, chairs adjusting, eyes narrowing. "And this," I continued, placing another document forward, "is a founding trust." Marcus leaned back slightly, watching me now, really watching, not dismissing, not laughing. I placed the final document at the center, and these are the transfer records. Silence, thick, unavoidable. One of the board members reached forward slowly, as if the paper might burn him. He read, then read again. His expression changed, subtly but completely. Another leaned in, then another. No one spoke, but everything was being said. Marcus didn't move. He stayed still, watching their reactions instead of the documents, because reactions tell you more than words ever will. Finally, he couldn't wait anymore. "What does it say?" he demanded. The board member who had been reading swallowed, looked down again, then up, but not at Marcus, at me. That was the moment, the exact moment. Everything shifted. I folded my hands gently on the table, the same way I had when I walked in, the same calm, the same patience. "Cridge and Partners," I said, "was built by my husband." A pause. Let it land. "For 31 years. Another pause. Longer this time. And when he passed, I continued. Ownership didn't disappear. Marcus leaned forward again, now fully focused. It transferred. The room felt smaller, tighter, like the walls themselves were listening. I looked directly at him, not with anger, not with pride, just truth. To me, The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They settled. Heavy. Final. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Because truth is only powerful when it's complete. And they still didn't know the part that would end everything. I slid one final page forward. Gently. Deliberately. Controlling ownership. I said, 63% of total shares. No one moved. No one spoke. Because now there was nothing left to question. Marcus Blake hadn't just miscalculated. He had built an entire takeover on something he never owned. And the room knew it. Every deal, every signature, every plan he had carefully constructed was collapsing right in front of him. And there was nothing he could do to stop it. I leaned back slightly, calm, unshaken, because the truth had finally arrived, and it didn't raise its voice. It simply took its place. And Marcus Blake was no longer the most powerful person in the room. Silence, not the kind people choose, the kind that takes over when reality changes too fast to process. Marcus didn't speak, at least not immediately. For a man who built his reputation on always having the final word, this was unfamiliar territory. He reached for the documents. Finally, slowly, as if touching them would somehow change what they said, his eyes moved across the page. Once, then again, longer this time. You could actually see it happening. That moment when confidence starts looking for something to hold on to and finds nothing. This, he began but stopped, cleared his throat. This doesn't make sense. No one responded, because it made perfect sense. His attorney leaned closer, reading over his shoulder. The color in his face shifted slightly. Not dramatically, but enough. Marcus noticed. Say something, he said, quieter now. Not commanding, not dominant, just needing confirmation. The attorney hesitated, and that hesitation said everything. These documents appear to be valid, he said carefully. Original filings, properly recorded. A pause. Legally binding. That was it. No complicated explanation. No technical defense. Just truth, stated plainly. Marcus leaned back, staring ahead now. Not at me, not at anyone. Just forward. Because in that moment, he wasn't looking at people anymore. He was looking at everything he had just lost. 4 months of strategy, endless negotiations, quiet manipulations, calculated confidence, all built on one assumption, that no one would challenge him. And now, that assumption had collapsed. This deal... One of the board members said slowly, almost as if testing the words before releasing them, cannot proceed. Another nodded, then another, not out of courage, but out of alignment with reality. Marcus let out a slow breath. Then finally, he looked at me again, but this time, he wasn't looking down at me. He was trying to understand me. You knew, he said, not a question, a realization. I held his gaze. Yes. Another pause. He leaned forward slightly. When, from the beginning, that answer hit harder than anything else, because it meant every word he had said, every assumption he had made, every time he dismissed me. I had already known how it would end. A faint, almost disbelieving smile touched his lips. Not arrogance, not confidence, just recognition. You let this happen, he said. I shook my head gently. No, I replied. I let you reveal it. That was the moment the power shift became undeniable. Not when the documents were read, not when the percentages were spoken, but when he understood he was never in control. Around the table, no one spoke anymore, because there was nothing left to negotiate. The acquisition was dead, but something else had happened too. Something quieter, but far more permanent. Marcus Blake's authority in that room had dissolved, and everyone felt it. He glanced around the table, looking for support, for agreement, for anything that would stabilize the moment, but no one met his eyes. That was the final confirmation, because power isn't just about what you have. It's about what others believe you have. And in that moment, no one believed in him anymore. He sat back, still, silent, and for the first time in a very long time, Marcus Blake had nothing left to say. I gathered my documents calmly, not rushed, not triumphant, just complete. Because this was never about humiliating him. It was about protecting what was mine and reminding everyone in that room that silence does not mean absence. It means timing. I stood up, picked up my handbag, and for a brief moment, I paused, not to look at him, not to prove anything, but because there was one final truth that needed to be left behind. Something simple, something they would remember long after this room was empty. Appearances, I said quietly, have never told the whole story. No one responded, because now they understood, and as I turned toward the door, I could feel it. The shift was complete. But what this moment would cost Marcus Blake was only just beginning. The door closed behind me, softly. No noise, no drama, just a quiet end to a moment that had changed everything. I didn't rush, didn't look back, didn't need to, because some endings don't require confirmation. You feel them. The hallway outside the boardroom was calm, too calm, like the world hadn't caught up yet to what had just happened inside. My footsteps echoed lightly as I walked, steady, measured, the same way I had walked into that building. But something inside me had shifted. Not victory, not relief, something deeper, closure. For 31 years, I had watched a man build something with patience, discipline, and quiet integrity. And for the first time since he was gone, I felt like I had protected that. Not perfectly, not easily, but faithfully. I stepped into the elevator, pressed a button, waited, and in that small, quiet space, memories came back. His voice, his smile, the way he used to pause before making decisions, wait for the right moment. I exhaled slowly, because now I understood something I hadn't fully grasped before. Power doesn't always arrive loudly. It doesn't always demand attention. It doesn't always need to prove itself. Sometimes, power is simply knowing when to speak and when to wait. The elevator doors opened. I stepped out into the sunlight, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself a small, quiet smile. Behind me, things were still unfolding. Inside that boardroom, Marcus Blake hadn't moved for a while after I left. No one rushed to speak to him. No one tried to fix the situation, because there was nothing left to fix. Eventually, he stood up, slowly, not like the man who had walked in earlier. That version of him was gone. He gathered his papers, but they didn't matter anymore. One of the board members tried to say something. Marcus, we didn't. He raised his hand slightly, not aggressively, just enough to stop the words, because explanations don't rebuild authority once it's gone. He walked out of the room, not rushed, not defeated, but changed, because moments like that don't just cost you deals, they cost you certainty. And when a man like Marcus loses certainty, he loses the very thing that made him powerful. In the days that followed, the story spread, quietly at first, then everywhere, not as gossip, but as a lesson. People didn't talk about the numbers or the failed acquisition. They talked about the moment a man judged too quickly and paid for it. They talked about the woman no one noticed until it was too late. And slowly, something shifted beyond that room. People started listening more carefully, looking more closely, questioning their assumptions, because the truth had revealed something simple but powerful. You can wear confidence and still be wrong. You can look ordinary and still hold everything. You can speak loudly and still understand nothing. And you can sit quietly in a room full of power and still be the most powerful person there. As for me, I returned to the company, not to celebrate, not to prove anything, but to continue what he started, to protect it, grow it, honor it, because some things are not meant to be sold. They are meant to be carried forward. And that promise, I intend to keep. So if there's anything this moment leaves behind, let it be this. Never measure a person by what you see, because the loudest presence in the room is not always the one that matters. And the quietest voice is often the one that changes everything. If this story touched your heart, Like and subscribe for more powerful stories of courage, justice, and unexpected reversals. And don't forget, comment where you're watching from. Your support helps keep these stories coming.